App State Mountaineers are hot, but they're going to get tested this weekend on the road, taking on the Troy Trojans. Locked on Sunbelt.
You are Locked on Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked on Sunbelt, your teams every day. A big series with the Cajuns and the Panthers. That's got a Sunbelt tourney bid written all over it. Really a no-win situation for the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers against Georgia Southern, except maybe 1 point. We'll talk about that. And I was a little bit disappointed when I put out there on Wednesday, if the NCAA does expand, and it does look like they are going to expand the men's and women's basketball tournament, will the Sunbelt benefit from an additional spot, an additional bid? And everybody who responded said no. That's going to go to the Auburns of the world. I'd say my Orange, but we don't know how good they're going to be. But just those middling SEC, ACC, and Big Ten teams. I have more faith. I think now the idea is that the Sunbelt team has got to be, top 60, top 50 to get in there, and that's not necessarily going to be easy, but that's the point. If the Sunbelt team, the regular season champ, doesn't win it, are they going to be able to get in? That's the way I was looking at it, but we shall see. I have more faith, all right? Sunbelt team's got a schedule, and that's not very easy to do necessarily, and then you got to win. You got to win some of those games like Southern Miss and Coastal Carolina have in baseball. All right, so let's talk a little bit of App State. Early on in the season, I was called out by an avid fan and viewer of Sunbelt. He also tends to call me out because of all the clickbait that I put out there. Although a lot of that, there's no links to click. It's either just a video, which I don't get paid for those shorts, or it's just a tweet. And there's nothing to click, so I'm not sure where the clickbait is, but he tends to call me out on that all the time, thinking I get paid on that, and I don't. I do get a nice little stipend, if you will, for Locked on Sunbelt, but that's, you guys knew that, we could get paid a little bit for that, and I do appreciate all the support. I sincerely do. But he also pointed out to me, maybe I need to ease up a little bit on App State because they started out the season playing Coastal Carolina and Southern Miss 2 out of their first 3 series. And they were competitive. Go back and look. They could have won 5 of those 6 ball games. They lost 10-6 to Coastal Carolina. It was a 6-6 game heading to the 9th. They were up 4-0 against Coastal Carolina. Coastal scores 3 in the 8th, 4 in the 9th. It was an 8-8 ball game after 6. They lose 8-7. Coastal Carolina with a sweep. Those all could have gone in the other direction. All right. They were up 5-2 heading into the 8th inning against Southern Miss. They lost 6-5. They won the second game 6-2, but they did get blown out 13-4. So that's being extremely competitive with the 2 best teams in the conference, where all those were flip of the coin ball games. All right. Now, Coastal Carolina and Southern Miss are good for a reason. And maybe App State's learning on how to compete at that level. We pointed out numerous times, you got to play all 9 innings against Coastal Carolina because they're going to keep on playing. Even when they're up 9-2, they're still bunting players over. So you got to be ready to get all 27 outs against those teams. But then App State got hot. They took 2 out of 3 from Marshall, despite losing the first game, 12-6. They took 2 out of 3 from ULM. They swept James Madison 10-0, 19-10, and 14-10. They swept Georgia Southern 16-3, 11-5, and 7-3. They did lose a disappointing 3-2 ball game to Wake. But now they finish up the season, and it's not going to be easy by any stretch. They're at Troy this weekend. They get the Cajuns at home, and then they're at Georgia State. All 3 of those teams are trying to improve their standing in the Sun Belt Conference. Troy trying to move up and get as good a seeding as possible. The Cajuns and Georgia State still trying to just qualify for the Sun Belt Conference tournament, whereas the Cajuns, I still believe, have an outside shot at getting an at-large berth if they can be top 40. And so this is not going to be an easy 9 ball games left in the Sun Belt Conference for App State. Not whatsoever. But they're right there with Southern Miss. They're 13-8. They're 1 game ahead of Troy. They are 4 games behind Coastal Carolina. Probably can't really think too much about first place, but you can certainly think about second place. And as we mentioned, you play, was it Wednesday and Thursday? If you win those 2 ball games, you get Friday off. And then come back and try to win the conference tournament rested Saturday and Sunday. It is a huge difference. All right. And this is where App State is going to see if they can stand up to Troy, who probably, they are in second. They are in 4th place technically. So they're having a good Sun Belt season, but they're under 500. So that's about as disappointing as a season as it is for Troy. They scheduled the right way, but you got to win some of those ball games, and they lost some of those can't lose ball games to hurt their RPI, basically. All right. But the shocking things looking at the stats here is App State, at least I think so, in lovely Boone, North Carolina, they got the most scenic ballpark in the conference. They're in the mountains surrounded by trees. But I did ask the coach, are you concerned about their pitching because of the high altitude and the home runs that you guys are going to give up? And he said no. And wouldn't you know it, he was right. App State has given up the 3rd fewest home runs in the Sun Belt this year. Only Southern Miss, 33, and South Alabama, 34, have given up less than App State's 37. On the other side of things, Troy has given up the 12th most home runs, 56, Georgia Southern, 62, and a little shocking, the Cajuns have given up 67, and that's shocking only because that ballpark usually plays really big. That's how those Cajuns had all those good pitchers for all those years. So will App State, ironically enough, be able to adapt to playing that short porch and right in Troy and keep it in the ballpark against what is generally considered a good hitting team in Troy? Troy's right in the middle of the pack when it comes to hitting. They're 7th, hitting 280. App State right now, number 1 in the conference with their 321 batting average. How about that? They don't hit a whole lot of home runs. They're 37th. Troy had 37 home runs they've hit, which is 9th. Troy is 5th with a 50. All right. Let's see the ERA overall. App State's in the middle of the pack, almost 5.5 runs a game. They're 6th. Troy is right behind them, just over 5.5 runs a game, 5.75. So we'll see what happens. Who keeps it in the ballpark and who doesn't is probably going to go a long way to determining who wins this series between Troy and App State. All right, let's move on. I did say Coastal Carolina, almost a no-win situation versus Georgia Southern. Did think of one where it's a little bit of winning. We'll talk about that right after I tell you about Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who are actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. Since I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing the candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it, Indeed, on Locked On Sunbelt. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let me remind you about the Everydayer Club, your chance to get Locked On Sunbelt ad-free. Plus, you can get that members-only Discord access. Join us at lockedonsunbelt.supercast.com. That's lockedonsunbelt.supercast.com. lockedonsunbelt.supercast.com. All right. I do have, let me have this. Let me take a sip. Remember this? Got to have the Mott's. You got to have the Mott's. All right. Coastal Carolina, no-win situation versus Georgia Southern, and that is mostly due to Georgia Southern's really bad RPI of 222. Coastal Carolina is coming into this series as of Wednesday evening. They are 16th in the RPI. Let me refresh that just to see. Actually, they dropped. They're 17th. That's why I refreshed it. Georgia Southern is 222. All right. The only benefit that Coastal has in this, it's at Georgia Southern. That's the only good thing. You win on the road, even if it's Georgia Southern, you're going to get some bonus points. The point of this is for Coastal Carolina, if feasible, I don't know if it's possible to beat Georgia Southern 3 times and not fall out of the top 20. If they are not out of the top 20 following the weekend, it's a successful weekend. Let's see who Coastal has left. Let's see. Because that's not really good to begin with. They're Old Dominion and Louisiana. Right now, it does not look good for Coastal Carolina to be a national seed, although a lot of people had them as a national seed. I thought this past week, I was kind of surprised at that. We'll see if that continues. But I guess if they win, their RPI can go down, but people can look that they won. It's a tough spot. It's a tough spot because that's where the Cajuns, we mentioned, benefit. They don't have to play ODU. They don't have to play Georgia Southern. In other words, the Cajuns can take 2 out of 3 from their next 3 opponents and probably see their RPI go up. Versus you want to see Coastal Carolina's RPI go down, take 2 out of 3 from Georgia Southern and see if you're in the top 20 then. And that's not going to happen. You're going to fall into the mid-20s and put yourself in a bind. So it's a no-win situation because you got to go in there and sweep. I don't know if you can talk about that. You really can't, because if you don't win Friday night, you can't sweep. You can't really be talking about a sweep. You got to really do one game at a time, but it's a tough spot. We've talked about these kind of series all season. And obviously this would be Georgia Southern's season. Can you imagine if Georgia Southern, they've lost, but they had at least 2 10-game losing streaks this year. Excuse me. If somehow they win a ball game against Coastal Carolina, or God forbid, take 2 out of 3, which I don't think is going to happen, but that would make their season. So don't think this is going to be necessarily easy. It should be, but we'll see. It's really a no-win situation for Coastal. All right. Elsewhere, we do have you got Southern Miss taking on ULM. And ULM all of a sudden has slipped a little bit. They were playing pretty good ball up until I think Ford Pemberton got suspended, right? They swept Texas State, lost 2 out of 3 to South Alabama, but took 2 out of 3 to the Cajuns. And they were sitting pretty. Then they lost 2 out of 3 to Georgia State. They lost 2 out of 3 to App State. And they lost 2 out of 3 to Arkansas State. Now, all those teams are the Georgia State's disappointing. That was in Monroe. App State's pretty good, and that was in Boone. And Arkansas State's pretty good as well. So not all that the other teams are trying as well. All right. The James Madison thing, I didn't understand, because James Madison has been playing awful for the past month or so and giving up literally 10 runs a ball game. And twice ULM, in fact, even in their win, they only scored 6 runs. They scored 3 in the first game, did Monroe, and they scored 2 in the second game. Then their bats came alive against a really hot La Tech team, go figure, and they beat them 16-5. So we'll see if ULM can turn this around, because, quickly going through those standings, ULM is going to find themselves out of the Sun Belt Conference tournament. If you get swept and you're 10-14, and the Cajuns end up taking, say, 2 out of 3 to Georgia State. We'll do that one in a little bit. So the Cajuns would be 11-13, and they would be ahead of ULM. So it's important for ULM to get a win. And at the same time, Southern Miss doesn't seem to be hurt as much with their outstanding schedule when they've made it 2 out of 3. They're at home, though. So that would count more if you do lose one at home to ULM. What is ULM's RPI? It had been just over 100 for the most part. Let's see what we got here. ULM's RPI is 143, so that's not going to be great for Southern Miss. And they are coming in as a 9 RPI. They, too, are looking at a national seed, certainly to host. And for those who don't know, if you're a national seed and you win the regional, you host the super regional. That's the point of that. It goes through your town. So you may not leave for the better part of 2 weeks. Get to play at home. So that's a big series for Southern Miss and ULM. And then you got a nice series. You do have Arkansas State, and this is a different kind of test compared to where am I here? App State and Troy. And I think we had one of these earlier where Arkansas State was going on the road. Let me see. They're playing ODU. All right. ODU was hot until they weren't. They needed to take care of business. They did take care of business against Southern Miss, took 2 out of 3. They lost 2 out of 3 to Georgia State. They took 2 out of 3, winning a Sunday ball game 2-1 against James Madison. They did lose 2 out of 3 to Troy when all 3 ball games were 6-4. That's a little wild and wacky. They took the last game against Coastal Carolina, and they did take 2 out of 3 from Monroe. Losers 2 out of 3 to the Cajuns. And they did win the final ball game 8-3. So this is going to be a little sign of, I know people don't like to hear it, maturity. See if you can go on the road and beat a team you should beat. Because Arkansas State is also looking for, they were in the mid-30s like a week ago, and now they're 48. And so if you go on the road to ODU, also take 2 out of 3, you're going to fall. ODU's is 135. But if you sweep ODU and you get the benefit of beating a team on the road, you may get closer to 40 than you are 50. Make it 2 out of 3, you're going to drop out of the top 50. That's the way I see things. So this is a big series for Arkansas State to see if they can put themselves back on the path to where they don't need to win the Sun Belt Conference tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. All right. Okay. We'll come back, wrap things up. We'll talk Cajuns and Panthers. Should be a big series. We got some other series to talk about as well. We'll do that after I thank everybody. All right. Thank you so much. Almost 2,950 subscribers. Hopefully we'll get to 3,000 by college football season, but I do appreciate it. And you guys have seen the posts on Facebook, on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky, on, did I say Instagram? I did, on all of them. I'm trying to get as much as out there as I can. And again, you can see it. It's not necessarily a straight line, but, up and down, but it seems to be going, headed up, where we do get a couple hundred views, and then it's a few hundred more, and then it's 1,000, and then it's 2,000. And you're like, where'd that come from? Let's do that again. And so that's meaning more subscribers and more listeners, and more people are aware of our podcast, despite doing it now I think we started it. Why do I think we started it in it would have been 21, at the end of 21. I think so. Isn't that when we started it, the week after all those three teams won on the same weekend, right? Would have been Georgia Southern, Marshall. Was it App State? I can't remember off the top of my head. But those three teams all pulled off 3 upsets, beating Power 4 squads. So do appreciate all your support. Please go over to Lockdown Sunbelt on YouTube and subscribe. And don't forget about Apple and Spotify as well. Do really appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. I was wrong and I was right. It was 2022. It was Marshall against Notre Dame, right? App versus A&M, and Georgia Southern versus Nebraska. All right. So I did have the 3 teams right. I had the year wrong. I do apologize. Tough time to remember what I did yesterday. Meanwhile, 2022 or 2021. Okay. Let's talk about this Cajuns and Panthers series. Cajuns did a good job last week, taking 2 out of 3, and then not losing a ball game to Southern. They were down 5-3, and then run rule at 15-5. And they did a good job of beating Arkansas State for the first 2 ball games, and then Arkansas State did take the finale 8-3. So where are the Cajuns? They are playing Nichols on Wednesday night, and they had their RPIs around 50. That's where it is as this game is going on. Okay. And again, they need to be, I think in the top 40. Well, I would say 45 versus Coastal Carolina. But again, Coastal Carolina's RPI is going to take a hit whether they win or not. So we'll see what happens to the Cajuns. They may have to be closer to 40 and hopefully get into the top 40 if they take a ball game from Coastal Carolina. But they did a good job there. Georgia State, they won't go away. All right. They took 2 out of 3 from Old Dominion, despite, I think, Old Dominion taking the first game of that series. They did. Old Dominion was hot, and they beat Georgia State 10-2. But then Georgia State wins the last 2 ball games, 10-4 and 8-7 in extra innings. So all of a sudden, Georgia State comes in hot to this ball game. You got a 6 o'clock start Central Time, 2 p.m. on Saturday, 1 p.m. on a Sunday. And it's a big series for both squads. As we mentioned, Georgia State is 10-11. They are right ahead of the Cajuns, who are 9-12. Arkansas State, Texas State, ULM, Georgia State, and Marshall are technically all tied for 6th with a 10-11 record. The Cajuns are tied with Old Dominion at 9-12. James Madison and Georgia Southern bringing up the rear. So this is a big series. If the Cajuns take 2 out of 3 from Georgia State, their RPI is not going to move that much, probably. I don't think it's going to go down. It's not going to move that much. And then they would be tied. They would both have records of 11 and 13. If Georgia State takes 2 out of 3 from the Cajuns, then they're going to put themselves in a good spot to get this Sun Belt Conference tournament bid, as they would even up their record at 12-12. All right. So that's a big spot, and we'll see if the Cajuns. Cody Brash has pitched well the last 2 Friday nights. We'll see if he goes. Andrew Herman did not have it on Saturday, but the Cajuns won that ball game anyway. And again, Arkansas State managed to win the last ball game. And we'll see what Georgia State can do going on and play the Cajuns. And then Georgia State's not bad, right? They're not bad. Their RPI, maybe they're the team with the RPI around 100. They have 118, so they fell a little bit. I think they've been inside the top 100 a little bit this year. Their overall is 22-22. They're 10-11 in the Sun Belt. All right, elsewhere in the Sun Belt, we haven't gone over South Alabama yet. Let's see. South Alabama's taking on Texas State. Huge series there. South Alabama is 11-10. Texas State is 10-11. Texas State, they've fallen to 41 RPI. South Alabama is 83 RPI. So South Alabama is going to have to win that Sun Belt Conference tournament at this point in time. But if somehow they go in to Texas State and take care of the Bobcats 2 out of 3 times, they'll put themselves in a better spot in the Sun Belt. They are 5th alone at 11-10. Unbelievable that you have Southern Miss, you have, what is it? Between, I guess it's 9 teams between Southern Miss and Marshall that are 13-8 and 10-11. And South Alabama is the only team that's 11-10. A little crazy. I find that peculiar. But there's a big series between these two teams. And again, you win a couple of ball games. And, if Texas State can win a couple of ball games, again, their RPI is not going to improve that much with South Alabama at 83. South Alabama's RPI can move a little bit if they take 2 out of 3 from Texas State. But really, these two teams are looking for, Texas State's looking to get into the top 40. Top 40 RPI out of the Sun Belt, you should be in the NCAA tournament at large berth. All right, that's what I believe. But Texas State's got a little work to do. Anyways, that is a big, big series as well. All right. And then you do have James Madison and Marshall. I mean, if you're James Madison, you want to save face, and I guess you still have a shot at getting hot and making the Sun Belt Conference tournament. If you're Marshall and you want to play in the Sun Belt Conference tournament, you got to take 2 out of 3 from James Madison. It's very simple. All right. You should be the better team. Although JMU did take 2 out of 3 last weekend from Monroe. If Marshall wants to play in the Sun Belt Conference tournament and have a shot at winning the Sun Belt Conference tournament, they got to take 2 out of 3 from James Madison. That's really about it. Okay. Let me know what you guys think. Who's going to win it? Let me go through these here. I'm probably going to go, not Homer, but let's see here. We'll take Marshall in that series. Arkansas State over Old Dominion. I think Coastal will sweep Georgia Southern. Let's see if App State can take 2 out of 3 from Troy. I would be impressed with that, okay? Texas State's probably going to take 2 out of 3 from South Alabama. Southern Miss, 2 out of 3 from Monroe. And let's see if the Cajuns can take 2 out of 3 from Georgia State. See if anybody surprises us with those quick picks, all right? Again, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll do more in-depth into the series on for Friday's episode. I am off work on Friday. My niece is graduating college. I somehow got off the Oaks. Usually we're extremely busy, but I had that day off from the get-go. I didn't even have to ask for it, so that's nice. Be back for the Derby, going to Cincinnati and going to spend time. Mama Schultz is coming to town, all right, along with my brother Eric, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And we get to spend time with my niece who is graduating from the University of Cincinnati. Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. We still should have an episode on Friday. One thing has nothing to do with another, but we'll see. And I should be back to watch some baseball on Friday night. I will say that. There was a little get-together, but that's unfortunately on Saturday, which I will be missing. Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Please go over to Lockdown Sunbelt over on YouTube and subscribe. Also, the Apple and the Spotify, the audio numbers do help as well. All right. Thank you so much. You guys are the best. We will talk to you again on Friday. You've been watching and listening to Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day. Have a great Thursday, everybody. We'll talk to you again on Friday.